Okay, let's talk about filters. Now filters are used in all sorts of places, but by far the most common use of a filter is for keying out a green screen. So you'll see a lot of live streamers with a face cam and apparently hovering in mid-air. So green screen is kind of a common word. It can actually be any colour. It's just a particular green has been chosen over the years because that's a colour that people tended to wear less. So you didn't get invisible torsos when people wore a green t-shirt. But in order to see filters, we're going to need a source. So I've got a clean scene here again. So I'm sorry for you, but you're going to see the face cam again. But it's the simplest way to show. So I'm going to add my video capture device again. And I'm going to call it Simon Cam again, and I'm going to pick my FaceTime HD camera, accept the defaults, and away we go. And here we are looking at me again. Hello again. I'm going to, just to make it nice and easy, go to transform, fit to screen, and I'm just going to lock it in case I accidentally click it. Now we've got a number of problems that we need to resolve here, one of which is the fact that I'm very clearly sat in front of a green screen. It's just a cheap piece of chroma green, which I purchased on Amazon, and it doesn't quite fit the corners. You can see the corner there and the corner there, but it doesn't really matter because this is the bit that I care about. Well, I don't care about, you certainly don't care about, but this is the bit where I'm in. So if I want to add a video, that's great. But if I have a video, let's, just for the sake of this, let's add another source. Let's add an image, and let's add our purple image again. And let's get this purple image and go OK and go OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit that to screen. Yeah, and it doesn't quite fit because of the problems we talked about before. So right click, transform, edit transform, scale to outer bounds so it fills the whole image. I'm going to close that, and I just care about the purple bits. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this off screen like this until it's just purple like that. Then I'm going to lock that, and as we can see, this is now in front of my face cam. So I'm going to click on the purple, and I'm going to move that down, and then my face cam's now in front of it, and that's great. So now we'll click on Simon Cam, and here I am in front of the purple, but you can't see any of the purple because the green screen is in the way. What we'd like to do is replace this green with transparency, so that we can see the purple through it, and that's exactly what filters are for. So let's go to Simon Cam. I'm going to right click again, and at the bottom here is filters. So I shall click filters, and that brings up this screen. Now we can apply all sorts of filters, some from audio and then some effects down the bottom here, and the effect is what we want. We're going to click a plus, and we're going to go up here to chroma key. There's lots of other adjustments. We'll talk about a couple of them in a moment. But for now we're just going to do the nice quick one, which is chroma key. Click chroma key. I can change its name if I like, but it seems to cover it pretty well, and I'll click OK, and straight away it'll load up the defaults, and you can see that actually everywhere where the green screen was has been instantly replaced. It's not perfect because I've got kind of a little furry green around the edge, but most of the problems with green screen are how you light it. So if you've got a nice evenly lit green screen and you're a long way away from it, then actually it should be fairly easy to separate you. But there are a few options here that we can work with to try and tidy it up as much as we can within the boundaries of OBS. OBS is exceptionally good at live keying, which is what it's doing right now. So it's doing this live, I'm live, and it's literally cutting me out live. Here's the key color type. Green is expecting a particular color of green, which most of the chroma key backgrounds that you can purchase are all of roughly the same color. I actually have two green screens. There's this one, which is this particular color here. I'm just going to go over to here, and again you can turn the filters on and off. So if I turn the filter off, this is the color of green screen that I actually have. In the room behind the piano that I showed you in the introduction, there's actually a slightly different color, different manufactured green screen. They are two different color greens, but OBS is so good at working out what's going on, it does actually, you can't actually tell where the join is at all, and that's down to some of these settings down here. So I'll just turn the filter back on again, And so here we go, we've got it cut. I can then choose and move these sliders around. So it has a good go. This is the defaults. If I go this way, then it's choosing how similar to the green number it's got stored in there, or not. This is not at all similar, so it's literally got rid of the whole video. So normally we go somewhere around the 400 mark and then just slide it backwards and forwards, and you can see on the live view over here that it's slightly purple. But also if you look at this here, as I move away, you can see the real world popping backwards and forwards, and I can go there, and I can go that far until I start to go into some sort of horrific ghost version of myself. And you can slide backwards and forwards until you can just see the difference. So there was about as smooth as it's going to get. And then talking about smoothness, we can go here, and this will then decide whether OBS is trying to smooth out the end result. And we can go too far, and again I'll ghost away. And again, it's just a matter of playing with these options until it looks realistic enough. You see the little edge? I've got a really crispy edge, and then I'll go and it'll be a bit furry sort of thing. And I can slide the slider, or I can move this up and down. Or another nice thing that I like to do in OBS is anytime you've got a button, you've got a number here, I can click inside it, and then I can press the up and down cursor key. If I hold down the up, it'll move the numbers for me slowly, and that's a really nice way to move these boxes around. So I've got a slightly transparent cheek, so I'll leave it back on where it started. The last one is the key color spill reduction, which is a sort of a long way of saying how much of a color are you going to use. So if I get this, I can get rid of this and it won't spill any color anywhere, and it'll be really easy for OBS to separate it. Or I can go right back to the start here. This is really only effective if you've got, so for example on my piano is gloss, so it reflects some of the green from the green screen, which is right behind it. So this is really useful for helping to try and separate that as much as possible. My recommendation is just go with the defaults as much as you can, and then play with each one of these to gradually improve your result until you're happy with what you've got. But by far the easiest way, or the best starting position, is to light your green screen, is to set yourself up in as nicer environment as possible, which this is not. I've got a window straight in front of me, so I'm getting some nice natural, taking advantage of the fact that I've got an overcast sky, and I'm getting some nice natural light, but I shouldn't really be close enough to this green screen to touch it. But at the same time, the further it goes back, the bigger the green screen would have to be. So let's say that we're pretty happy with this. Turn it on again and close, and now I've got a lovely green screen cut out version of me, so my head is detached. The only problem is that the green screen doesn't quite go up to this corner. It would be nice to be able to do something about that. So one of the things that we haven't looked at, if I go back to right click and transform and edit transform, there's a couple of settings that we haven't tried changing before, which is the cropping. So what I can do is I can crop the left in. I'm going to use the up cursor key to crop the left. And you can't see it so well because it's going. So what I'm going to do is I'm just momentarily, because it's difficult to see, I'll go back to filters, right click filters, and just turn the chroma key off for a moment. I'm about to close, and then it'll be easier to see what we're doing. So then we'll go transform, edit transform, back down here, and now when I do the left, you'll see the green screen gradually be reduced like this, and it'll drag me in, and I'm just gradually trimming off the bit that I don't care about. And then I'll go to the right, and I'll do the same thing. I'll trim off the bit at the right that I don't care about, until I'm left with a good amount of green screen all surrounding me, and that's marvellous. So then when I go back to filters, right click filters, turn the green screen back on again, and close, I've now managed to detach myself from anything at all, and I'm now just a disembodied head, which I can put anywhere I like. So now the lovely thing about that is that then I can move my head down to here like this, and that's more like what you're expecting to see, lock it in place. When you look at any streamer, you can see that I'm now detached from the real world, and all is well. Alright, so that's the chroma key. There are a few other filters available. I'm just going to unlock myself and bring myself back up again so that we can see what's going on. Again, I apologise, you've got to look at me. I don't have a nice handy other head to use. Let's go right click and go filters, and we can have a look at a few of the other filters that we can add. So there's chroma key. Let's add color correction, and I'll just allow it to be called color correction. And on color correction is all the standard video color correction things you could possibly imagine. I can change the gamma, yeah, I can change the contrast, I can change the brightness. It doesn't really need me to explain what this is. I'll go back to defaults. One of the useful things though is there is nothing in the actual, if I wanted to have a slightly faded image, like a little ghostly image of myself like this, the only way to do that is to add a color correction filter, which sounds a bit odd because you're adding a filter to then filter yourself out, if you see what I mean. But that's the easiest way I found to then change the opacity and fade yourself in and out. In a similar way to how the sources are stacked on top of each other, so the filters are stacked on top of each other. So the chroma key is going to happen first, then the color correction will happen after that. They're kind of the other way up to how it works elsewhere. But again, experimentation is by far the best way to do this, and again I can get rid of the color correction if I don't like. And then there's an alternative to chroma key which is called luma key, which I'll just add, and I'll turn off chroma key and we'll do luma key instead. Luma works in black and white essentially. So if you've got a black and white image or a black and white video that you're using and you want to let the black be transparent or let the white be transparent, then you can use this in the same way that we just did with the chroma key. I have used it on occasion where I've got a black and white effect that I'm using and I just want to make the black transparent. Then you can use luma key to do that because chroma key wouldn't do it. So let's get rid of that. Put chroma key back in. The only other effect I want to show is apply LUT. And LUT stands for lookup table, and what that does, I'll apply LUT, is it takes a file that has been created that allows for a lot of color correction and sort of color grading to happen, and give it's a bit like selecting an Instagram, very similar to selecting an Instagram filter or a filter in a photo app. Easiest way is to show you. I'm just going to browse. And I'll just go to the LUTs that are on here. I've downloaded a lot of free ones, which I'll show you in a second. But let's just pick, I don't know, let's just pick that one and click OK. And you'll see what it's done is it's done this particular sort of, Arabian kind of feel to it, but sort of dusky. And you can decide how much of a filter you want to apply on this one, or I can pick a different one. Let's go and pick a different one. Let's pick that one, for example. There we go, and we've got a slightly more moody, darkened effect, and it's a really good way of getting kind of a movie effect to your camera or whatever your source is really quickly. There are a good old selection of them. This one here, if we go to this Rocket Stock, have got a 35 free LUTs that you can download. There's also, this is just a quick Google, will give you these, 29 free LUTs for video. And you just simply download them, put them somewhere, and then in OBS you select them as a file, and it will apply straight away as a filter. And it's a really nice way. They don't have to be quite as brutal as this. And again, if you like that filter, you can just adjust the amount. So instead of this is the natural me, if you like, and then I can just apply as much of it as I want to make it sort of slightly, there we go, slightly moody. And now I've got a disembodied, slightly moody head that I can put down here, like that, and lock it in place. And then I can carry on with everything else that I want to do. So that's a brief view on filters. We'll have a little talk about audio filters when it comes to audio mixing. But that's our video filters and how we can set the most important one being chroma key for face cams like this, to allow us to detach ourselves from the background. One final little thing on the chroma key. If I just go back to chroma key, you don't have to use green. You can use blue, you can use magenta, or you can use custom. And if you use custom, you can then go and actually physically select the color you want to use instead of the chroma key. So if you had a red background for whatever reason, you can then key out the red background if you so desired. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's just doing whatever color is selected. So that's that. Now on, we'll move on to the next thing, which is having more than one scene. Alright then, let's see if we can do something which is slightly more interesting than one scene at a time, and let's see if we can have a couple of scenes, or perhaps even 3, live on the edge. We're going to set it up as if we're going to have a stream where we're demonstrating something on our computer. So it'll be nice to have a face cam to look at the person you're training, and then a scene with the face cam and the screen itself, and then perhaps a scene to have at the start of the stream. If it was a live stream, it's always nice to have sort of a starting screen where you can make sure everything's working, make sure the stream is all working correctly, and you can sort of do that in the comfort without having the camera looking straight at you at the time. So let's use this scene, the blank one we've got here, and we'll sort the face cam out first, and we're going to do that exactly the same way before. Again, warning, you are going to see my face, I apologise. So we're going to have a video capture device source, and I'm going to call that face cam, and then I will select the camera for the laptop, and there we are. And here we are, this is me, all set up and ready to go. Let's drag this to the full size of the screen. Again, I could do that with a right click and a transform and fit to screen, and there we go. And that seems reasonable at the moment, so we'll just lock it so we don't accidentally drag it around. But this face cam again has got the green screen behind it, so it doesn't look as good as it can. So we're going to right click on the face cam, and we're going to go to filters, and we're going to add an effect filter and the chroma key like this, and I'll let it be called chroma key. And there we go, and it's done a reasonable job of getting rid of it, getting rid of the green. But however, down here I can see, so you can sometimes see it better on the sort of preview here, or sometimes on the reel, where you sometimes have to move the window around to see what's going on. But I want to really try and get rid of some of this darkness here, so I can see it's slightly green over here. So what we'll do is we'll just play around with the slides until it goes away, and that seems to have just edged that off nicely. I'm just going to have a little play with the smoothness as well. Again, if I take this smoothness right away, it's actually nearer the original footage, but then my cheeks have got a slight green tinge to them where the reflection from the green screen is coming back. So it's always a bit of a pull. Again, the key colour spill, you can see there's a little bit of green hinting in then, and this will get, if I go this way, it'll take away all the colour, to completely desaturate it. But we want somewhere where we're happy with it really, and I just tend to move this out of the way so I can see what it looks like both on the preview, which turns it grey, and then in the real world, if you like, over here. So I'm reasonably happy with that. Now I could then play, if I go to the filters again, I can add a colour correction, call it colour correction, and then I can say, oh, I might want to change the contrast a little bit, you know, dark, you know, that's a better contrast, isn't it? Slightly more moody, if you like. I can fiddle around with the gamma as well, which tends to be a bit extreme, and the brightness, you know, that's not too bad, and a bit of saturation, I can richen it up a little bit. There we go, and is that an improvement? For me, who knows, but I can sort of move this out of the way, and I can turn off and on the colour correction, and I think that is a slight improvement. But what I might try, I'll leave that there because I do like that more than not. But I'll turn it off for a moment, and then I'm going to add a lookup table, or a LUT as people call it. And as I showed this before, I'm going to go there, then I'm going to go find a file, and in this case I'm going to use this one down here that I've got. These are all free, I haven't paid for any of these are all entirely free. I'm going to get that one. That looks quite severe, but if I pull it back slightly to somewhere, it always has to have a little think while I'm doing this. Let's go to, say, here, somewhere there. Let's see again, we can turn it off and then turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. It's a bit moody, so let's do that. Let's try that with the colour correction. So we've got colour correction and the LUT. That's not too bad. Anyway, you can play with this for as long as you like to get something. It's perhaps a little bit saturated. Let's take some of that away a little bit. Again, sometimes I think it's nice to be a little bit more extreme if you're going to then minimize the camera and have it smaller, because then it'll have a bigger effect. But there we go. So we gradually built these filters up. We've said that we're going to have the chroma key. If I go back to the original, turn them all off, this is what we started with. Then we got rid of the green screen, then I color corrected it, and then I've added the LUT to make it slightly more moody. One thing I want to mention, which I didn't mention before, is any time you browse for a file, so in this case I've gone for the LUT, or when we do images, which we'll do in a moment, or videos or anything else, OBS does not bring this file into OBS. It doesn't bring it into your OBS project. It stays where it is on the hard drive or whatever device you're using. If I then, behind the scenes, went and moved this file, or in the case of an image, if I moved it from the folder where it was, OBS is not going to be able to find it anymore, and so it will just vanish from inside your OBS. So what I recommend you do is you create a folder somewhere where all your OBS things are going to be, all your resources are going to be, and leave them there. Once they're in there, have a folder for video, have a folder for images, have a folder for whatever you want, and leave them in there, and don't move that folder. If you move that folder, OBS is going to use this path here to try and find this file. If that path has gone, then there's nothing OBS can do, and it just literally can't find the file. With a LUT it's not such a problem, because we'll just be left with that. But with something like an image or a video, for example, if that's suddenly vanished, then you're scuppered. So let's say that we're happy with this. That's fine. We've got a couple of problems though. One, black background is a bit severe, so that's a problem. But also two, still got a bit of reality here, because the world, the green screen doesn't quite reach the whole thing. It's miles away from me though, so we can lose that. So we'll do the same as what we did before. I'm going to right click here, go to transform and edit transform, and I'm going to let the left go in. You can see it's getting rid of it. It's just scrolling in. I'm just pressing the up cursor key. I can use the arrows instead. I can do it with this one and click the arrows instead, or you can literally type a number in here, but all I'm doing is just holding the up just to see where it's gone, and now that corner is completely gone, and I'm happy that it's left it behind. If you want to see what that's done to reality, again, go back to filters and turn off your chroma key, and you'll see that this is what the camera is actually picking up, and this is what we've done to it. We've made that a nice square image now. So I can put the chroma back on and close that. It may have moved things around. We'll undo the padlock, and it may have moved things around, so I can just slide this around again and see if I like where I am, but I think I'm fairly central. I can move it around, but that looks pretty good. So let's leave that roughly where it is and lock that in place. Again, the black background, not terrific. So let's add a background image. So I'm going to go add, I'm going to go to an image. I'm then going to call this face cam background, BG. I'm going to browse for it, and currently I'm going to get these out of my downloads folder, and we'll go with the purple background because I'm wearing a blue shirt, so blue wouldn't be a good idea. There's the purple background. Again, I'm going to right click on here, I'm going to go transform, and I'm going to go fit to screen, and that'll fit it entirely to screen. I'm then going to go right click, and I'm going to go transform, edit transform, and I'm going to scale to outer bound so it fills the entire box, and close. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion, you can't see me anymore. So what I'll do is I've clicked on Facecam, and I'm going to move it down to move it so that it's behind the camera. And there we go. Do I like that? Well, not completely. I don't think, for this instance, the perspective doesn't look right to have the floor. It looks like I'm sitting quite low down on the floor. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the corner of this until it's all purple, and then perhaps move it around, and then lock that in place. Now we have a face cam, and that's it. And I've got a face cam with a background, and it seems quite reasonable. The only problem is that nobody can hear me because there's nothing in the audio mixer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another source, and we're going to go add, and we're going to go input capture, for audio input capture, and I'm going to call that my Zoom H5 again. Go OK, and we'll pick up the H5, and then we'll go OK. And now I've got an H5. I lock it just for habit, really. That doesn't actually do anything, but I tend to lock it so I know that I've dealt with it. And I check my level, and really my Zoom H5 should be have the volume changed, but I could fiddle with that. But for now, we're not going to worry too much about that. So there we go. I've got a face cam and I'm recording. I've got some audio. So that's great. So now I want a very similar scene, but I would like to have the desktop as well that I'm recording. So for my now I can create a new scene by clicking plus and add a new scene, and I have to start again. And let's do that. So let's go add new scene, and we'll call this second scene. And there we go, got nothing. But what I can do, if I go plus, I can go video capture device. And now I've got two options. So I can create a new one, which will require me to pick a different camera. Or I can add an existing face cam and click OK. And the good news about this is that this face cam is a unique source. So although we're in two different scenes, this face cam still has, if I go right click and filters, yeah, it's still got the filters on it. Yeah, and everything's good to go on the filters. But you will notice that because we're in a new scene, we've lost the transform. So the corners have come out again. Yeah, and we have to redo. I have to go right click, transform, edit transform, and I have to move the left back in again. And then move the right back in again. And I have to do the same transforms that I did before. There are ways around that. If I go back to my first scene, here's my first scene, I can actually go on Facecam, right click, transform, copy transform, and then go back to the second scene, go to Facecam, right click, and paste transform. And that will copy everything and put it in exactly the same place as it was before. So that's one shortcut, and that's one way to get the same result in multiple scenes. But there is an easier way. I'm going to go to this second scene and I'm going to right click and remove it. You can click the minus button down here as well. Going to get rid of the second scene. Instead, I'm going to duplicate. So I'm going to right click this first scene and duplicate the whole thing. So we're going to click duplicate. It's going to ask me for a name. We'll call it second scene again. Since I'm mentioning names, you can't have anything in OBS named the same twice. So you can't have scene, therefore I couldn't have a new source called second scene. Everything has to be uniquely named. So that's why I had Facecam BG here. I couldn't call the image Facecam again because the image has to be a separate name to everything else. So now I've got two scenes, absolutely the same, nothing different about them. So now though, I can play with the second scene and they automatically come through unlocked. I'm happy with the H5, I can leave that ticked there. And what I can then do is take my Facecam and make it smaller. So I'm going to make it down, put it down here to make it smaller because I want to leave space for the desktop. And the background I don't need, so I'm going to right click and remove. Am I sure? Yes I am. Yeah, I've removed it from here, but if I go back to the first scene, it's still here. If I were to then delete it from here, it's then gone for good. The whole background image is gone. So here we are on the second scene. I'm now happy where my Facecam is, and then I'm going to add a new source, and I'm going to add a display capture. I'm just going to leave it called display capture, and it's picked up the correct monitor straight away. OK. It's a bit zoomed in because you can see it's off to the side, so we'll do right click, transform. Oh, right click, transform. I'll get there in a minute. Transform, fit to screen. That's good. I'm going to lock that position because I like it, and then the only thing is it's in front of my camera, so I'm going to move it down and down again, and now I've got a display capture as well as a Facecam, and I've still got the audio from the H5 that I had before. So this is good. I now have two scenes and I can literally click from that scene to that scene and then click back again. So we have our two scenes, and we've got a first scene and a second scene, and that's absolutely fine, and we could work with this. There's no problem with that. That's everything's good to go. It's recording and all is well. But I do think it's nice to have a starting screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a brand new blank scene and call this starting scene. Why not? And this has got nothing in it, no microphone, no Facecam, nothing. And I'm going to add a media source, because I'm going to put a little video on here, and we're going to call this stream starting. And I'm going to select a video, and I've got my FaceTime stream starting video here, And I'm going to loop it so it just runs forever. And click OK. And here's a little video. I'm going to go right click transform. Oh, right click transform. Fit to screen and lock it. And there's a little video. Looks a bit odd like this because when I stream my piano I have the title of the theme of the week down here. And so we've got a stream starting and that's there flickering. I thought this would be a good opportunity to add another little tiny bit of information to the stream because that's a bit boring for people to watch. So one thing we can do is add some text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little text here and I'm just going to call it stream starting ticker, and we'll put some text on here. I'm going to put something like Simon will be along in a moment. Get yourself a lovely cup of tea ... And I'll put a few spaces here afterwards which will become obvious in a moment. Yeah, and so that's good. That looks a little bit large. We can scale it outside of this, but what I would recommend is actually scaling it, doing at least getting the font at least close to what you want it to be in here. That's still a little bit large, because then it will always be nicely scaled. If you scale it with the font, then it uses the font to adjust the scaling, and the text will always be nice and crisp. What I can do is once I've clicked OK, I can then scale it from here like you would expect as well, but at least then at least then you've got it close to how you'd like it to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then take this and transform and transform, fit to screen like that, and that looks pretty good to me. I'll then just move this down so it's at the bottom. Yeah. And that's great. Looks fine, doesn't it? It's nice and static. It looks good. But one thing we can do is if I go here and go to filters, I can add an effect filter called scroll. And when I add scroll, I'll just let it be called scroll. I can then choose how fast I want it to be. I can go backwards or forwards, and I can let that go like that. And we'll just say that that seems good. It's going to loop, and it's going to lock it. And there we go, that's going. It's going a little bit fast. It's a little bit mental. There's just that somewhere there's a sweet spot where it's going fast enough that you can sort of see it. There we go. And that's why I put the spacers in. So the spacers at the end give you a little bit of extra thing. I think it's a fantastic little effect. I know it's super simple, but you can have all sorts of picks up your fonts, and there's all sorts of things you can do with the scrolling. That scroll will actually work if you want something completely ridiculous. OBS doesn't care. So if I go back to first scene, go back to my face cam, I can add a filter, and I can add scroll to this, if you so wanted. And so therefore I can do that if I really wanted to. Why you'd do this, I don't know. But you can see we've then picked, we've lost the advantage of scrolling there, but you can do, you know, all sorts of bizarreness, and OBS will happily do this. It doesn't care. For now, I think that's ridiculous, so we'll get rid of that. Yeah. But I just think that a little ticker is a really nice little way to provide information, all while with very little effort. The scene order that we have at the top here, so I've got my first scene, I've got my second scene, and I've got my starting scene, makes no difference to OBS. It doesn't care. There's no sort of way that it's arranged, but I do like to think that, you know, starting scene, I might like to have that at the top. You can then, once you've selected this, you can then use your cursor keys to go up and down and flick through the scenes. No problem at all. One little thing we can look at is if I go view, there is a multi-view, so I can click multi-view windowed. The full screen one's there as well, and then we've got all the little scenes, and you can see what's going on the scenes before you click them. I can click another scene, and you can see, and then I can click another scene, yeah, and back, and you can use this to click between your scenes. This is similar in a way to something called studio mode, which I'll mention later on. But I think these are more useful if you have almost a two-person operation. So you've got someone working OBS while you're doing the streaming, or vice versa. That tends to be more useful. So now let's talk a little bit about scene transitions. As you've seen at the moment, as I click on a different scene, like this one here, you see it crossfades, and it goes from here, and it crossfades back, and it crossfades to this one, and crossfades back to that. So let's go to this one. And that's controlled by this option here, which is fade, and it's only two options in here really, fade or cut. If I click to cut, then it'll just go boom, straight through, boom, no choice. So fade is definitely a better option. Fade and fade for the standard operation. We can change how long that takes. I can type 1000 in here, and that'll then take a second. So slow fade and slow fade back. I have to say that 300 for a fade seems like a reasonable move across, and that's great. Now that's fine, that's absolutely fine, and to be honest, most of the time I use crossfade because there's no reason not to. However, there's something called stinger transitions, which are definitely worth talking about, because if you've seen any streams online, you will have seen people using stinger transitions, and there's quite an industry in stinger transitions. You can go and purchase all sorts of really complicated ones, and they are amazing. I have created my own for a couple of things. I've got one where a grand piano slides across and then slides back, so you can sort of do it that way. You really want it. All that you need for a stinger transition is a video which has got some transparency in it, and at some point this entire scene, the entire canvas, is entirely occluded by the video. So I have created a very simple one for the purpose of this course. I created it in Final Cut. Doesn't really matter, as long as the output video has some transparency and at some point everything is covered up. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new transition, and I'm going to add a stinger. Yeah, there's a few other ones you can play with as well. Swipe will move it across. You get just have a little play with them and see how you feel they work. But in this case, we're going to talk about custom transitions, such as stinger. I'm going to call it stinger, and then we need a video file. And again, this has to stay where it is. I've called it stinger 1 for a lack of inventiveness. And that's now going to essentially, when you change scene, it will play this video, and then at some point it will transition the scene. At the moment it's going to transition it right at the start, but I have designed this video to be 3 seconds long, and I know that halfway through that video everything is covered up. So I'm going to say at 1.5 seconds or 1500 milliseconds I'm going to transition. I'm going to say that everything's covered up. So now when I go to the second scene, it will do this, and then it'll do that. I can do the reverse. It'll go there, and then it'll come back up. So this may not be anything like what you'd like it to be for your scenes, but you can see that it does add a certain something to the transition. So I don't know why I'm pausing while the transition's happening. It's just I'm looking at it at the same time. So I can flick this back and I can say fade. So this is how we'd normally have it. So it'll go fade to the, and that's quite elegant, nothing wrong with that, and that's probably better in some ways for this particular layout. Or I can say stinger, and I can say let's do that one to get from there to there. Yeah. So it's entirely up to you how you use these. There are all sorts of stingers available, and there are some free ones. Just have to have a quick search on the internet to find free stingers, but really they're quite simple to create yourself, as long as you have the appropriate software to do it. So all you need is a video with some transparency, because if you look at this one as it comes in, at this point where those panels are not, the video has to be transparent to allow me to show through, and then I can go back and disappear, and then 1.5 seconds in it's going to transition between the two scenes. If you, like I say, search the internet for stinger transitions, free OBS stinger transitions, you're going to find some, and then there are some beautifully elegant ones for all sorts of themes that you can then pay for. They're not super expensive, But just make sure, if you do go looking for stinger transitions, there are a couple of flavors of OBS. So this is OBS Studio, and there's also Streamlabs OBS, also free, which is built on top of OBS and has some other features which I won't go into in this course. But it has some other features which are more streamlined for Twitch streaming and game streaming, and having donation boxes come up and all sorts of widgets. That's beyond the scope of this course. The idea of this course is to get you started in plain vanilla OBS. And already you can see we've got a face cam, we've got a screen sharing, we've got a microphone, we've got a starting screen, we've got a few effects that we can do, and these stingers are dead simple to use. I have provided this stinger file for your use in the course materials, so by all means use it. It's a bit clunky, but it does do a more effective job than a simple fade, if that's what you're after. So that's great. So that's multiple scenes. We can have as many scenes as you like. It doesn't really, OBS doesn't really care. The only thing I would keep an eye on down here is, it depends on the scene I'm in, but if I go to this scene, yeah, then down the bottom here you can see the CPU usage changed as the transition happened, and now we're at 11% for this particular scene, so it's not such a hard thing to do. It actually works with cameras quite quickly and quite nicely. If I then go up to a video, then on this particular computer it finds that video is slightly harder to work than the face cam, so it's running at 19%. This particular MacBook that I'm running this on doesn't have the greatest graphics card in the world. It's not the newest machine, so the better your machine, the lower this number's going to be, and if it's got a much more hardware accelerated graphics card, then the life gets better and better and better. But you do need to keep a little eye on CPU, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we actually talk about running a stream or running a recording in a later video. So that's great. So that's multiple scenes. They can be as complicated as you like, but try and separate your stream into different scenes. It's much better to have a new scene than it is to have little things that you can turn on and off individually to make sort of a complicated scene. It's so easy to take, if I wanted a minor change to a scene, then it's so much easier to really duplicate the scene and have a new change. But we'll look at a slight tweak on this theory in the next video, where we talk about grouping objects as well as nested scenes, which is very useful. So we'll talk about that in the next video.